Good morning, happy Friday, and welcome to another morning live podcast with Real Estate Mindset. We have Mitch Wexler here, and today we're going to give you guys a full breakdown and comprehensive review on the housing market, the mortgage market, the economy, and we're going to talk about what happens before and during recession when it comes to unemployment and house prices. So we have a really good workup for you guys today. I just wanted to say good morning to everyone. Good morning, Danny. Good morning to you as well. And do me a favor, guys. Give us your questions. So throughout this video, throughout the various segments, we're going to review your questions. We're going to answer them, something that we want to do to give back to you guys as the community. And we want the community to grow. We want to make sure that you guys are fully updated with what's going on. And if you guys have questions, we want you guys to know we will answer them. Mitch Wexler, before I go into our first video that's going to talk about how these mortgage rates, which are about 7% right now, are the new normal. But anything you want to say before we begin? And also, good morning to everyone.
Good morning. No, it's all good. It's rather dark out here still, but it's all good.
Nice to see you. I am blessed. It is nice to hear that, Mitch. It is dark out here as well. Nice to see everyone. Some really good people here. There's Clark, the realtor. Let's see here. Why do we focus? I mean, there's so many negative things. I mean, let's talk about something positive. All right. So the positive thing is we get to listen to people that are being real today. All right. That's the positive thing. And we get people that are listening to us that are also real today. So that's also positive. And also another positive thing, we made you guys free courses to empower yourselves to become winners in this market. So that's also good news. So wanted to focus on that good news like they wanted. Now let's go into our first video, and then we're going to get started on our mortgage and housing market update. And I'm going to bring up on that segment various data points, and we're going to show you guys again what happened right before recession and right after recession when it comes to unemployment, home prices, and also supply, and we'll go over demand and things like that. But let's get started with our first video. And if you guys can, please, again, ask your questions below, but let me know that the audio is okay. Mitch, I am going to mute us, so hang on a second, buddy. And again, guys, let me know that the audio is okay.
More on housing and real estate and rates and money. Let's bring in our friend Beth Friedman. She's CEO at Brown Harris Stevens. Beth, great to see you during the daylight hours. Okay, I don't know if you heard our previous conversation with Michael Sonnenfeld, the Tiger 21, but I'm going to, just between us and Kelly, don't tell anybody, let's talk about the dirty secret of high-end real estate that nobody wants to talk about. I understand that mortgage rates matter to most people in America. I get that. They would matter to me. But for a lot of your buyers and a lot of people in towns like where we live, they pay cash. They don't care what mortgage rates are. How has cash changed the real estate market?
Yeah, first of all, Solly, it's so nice to see you and Kelly as well. But yeah, like cities like New York, it's a big cash market. And so that's not really having the same impact that the rest of the country is having because rates deeply impact them. And there was a discussion about things getting back to normal. I'm here to tell you, Solly, that this is the new normal, that we are in a different time, that rates are going to be in the 6% range for quite some time. They may dip a little bit lower. Things are unaffordable. First-time home buyers today are now closer to 40 years old, when 10 years ago they were like 28 or 29. So we have a lot of issues here. And so, yes, New York City, Miami, Palm Beach, certain parts of Connecticut, very expensive places are cash. But most of the country, most people are looking to buy their dream home, their first time home. And we have to make that a possibility again. We have failed the American people because it's become affordable.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the Crocker Mansion in Ramapo, New Jersey, that you're repping, by the way, $33 million. Let's talk about things that most people can get to. Yeah, I look. Okay, Beth, I check these things out. Okay, I would like to live there.
Solly, I know one thing about you. You are a very smart guy and always prepared.
Well, thank you for that.
So anyway.
Beth, I'm kidding. So here's the reality, though. People are waiting. They buy a home based on the monthly payment, not on the value, right? So they don't look at the price. They say, what can I afford? For the most part, every month, they're waiting. You just said this is the new normal. So it doesn't sound like Beth Friedman, who's forgotten more about real estate than a lot of us ever known, is expecting lower mortgage rates anytime, any soon.
Well, look, January was a better month. There was more activity. And I don't know. I feel like this is a whiplash environment. I don't know what's happening. Could rates go down a little bit? Could we start to see more activity? It's possible. But I will tell you this, that the progress is going to be incremental. We've been at a standstill with buyers and sellers, but I do think that it will improve. There is optimism. Bonuses are up 20% on Wall Street, and the economy is doing well. And maybe some wars are ending, which could be a good thing. And so the American people are potentially in a very good position. So I'm pretty bullish on housing. I just think we need to get back to a place where young people can buy their first home. That's the America that we know and love, and we need to get back to that.
Okay, yeah, we need to get back to that, but she doesn't mention how to get back to that. Couple things here, Mitch, is that she said, and this is a sad truth of the situation, people are generally more concerned about their payment versus the price. That is a no-no. 99% of the time, the price is more important. 99% of the time, there's always these one-offs, all right? I get it was always one-off, but your price is more important than your payment. I do agree with what she said to a certain extent. I think if rates went down to like low 5%, it's going to bring back some buyers because it will bring back some sellers. I think honestly, Mitch, that we're going to start, the lower that rates go, the more inventory that we'll see and the more new listings will come to the market. What is your take on her optimism in the video that we just watched? And I'll look at some questions real quick here.
The problem is New York is not the rest of the world. And you have a bifurcated market. So as far as I'm concerned, everything they were just talking about isn't applicable. It works for a very small segment in New York, be it Manhattan or just outside of Manhattan. The problem is that the public, mom and pop, are dancing on a razor blade. So coincidentally, just yesterday, I was working on a spreadsheet on the multifamily side because we already did one on the single family side. And that spreadsheet showed that the average renter can afford $1,435 per month to pay the rent. Well, that $1,435 is the equivalent of $140,000, $150,000 worth of per unit multifamily value. Here's the problem. If I was to go and build a multifamily unit right now today, it would cost $225,000. That's $130,000 plus delta. That's the point. Mom and pop can't afford new multifamily. Well, you take that exact same circumstance and you apply it to the 28% debt to income ratio on single family. That's the exact same thing that's happening on the single family. They cannot afford it. The money's not there. They're literally dancing on a razor blade. So the idea that somebody says, well, they're going to look at it based on the payment, not based on the value, you just made my case. This is the problem. This is the inflation. This is the supply chain. This is the fraud in the real estate taxes that have caused these problems. It's cumulative compounding of fraud at multiple levels, which is why mom and pop don't have the money to be able to afford the rent or to be able to afford the mortgage.
Okay, very good, very good. Now, this is a good question right here, Mitch. I want to try to answer it. I want to give it to you, and then we'll move on here. Not too many questions, but why did value, this is from Ray. Ray, thank you for giving us your question here. Why did values go up, excuse me, so fast during COVID? I'll answer this by starting with, we were locked down for about a year. So when you're locked down for about a year, obviously there's pent up demand. On top of that pent up demand, they stopped new home construction, which made the inventory extremely low. So you had pent up demand and you had lower inventory to begin with. And then they made it hyper bad and hyper awful because in addition to those two things, which are bad enough, they also lowered interest rates into the 2% and gave us a free down payment in the form of the federal government injecting that money into our bank accounts. So they literally massively stimulated the housing market, whether it was intentional or not, I do not know. So you have those factors. Plus, in addition to that, you have the fraud at the central appraisal district. So what that means is if I am in a subdivision of 100 homes, 3 homes sell in that subdivision, now all the homes in the subdivision are now their value skyrockets up. So you have the fraud, you have the data manipulation, you have the low interest rates, you have the lockdown, you have the low inventory, and you have a media and you have a system that lies to you. that convinces you that it's a good time to buy right now, and people buy. And so you have all those things. And plus, a lot of people paid down their debts during the lockdown. So you just had a buyer coming out of lockdowns that was hyper hungry to purchase homes that we didn't have enough of with super low financing. And that's why those prices went up. But, I would say, again, the fraud and corruption is a big reason why. And then also that applies to new home builds. So not just the central appraisal districts playing the comp game, the new home builders, because of the lack of regulation, are also able to play that comparable game. If they sell their house, say, to an investor for an elevated price, just one house, a new home builder sells a property elevated to an investor, as an example, now they could sell all the houses for that amount. So a lot of trickery, a lot of deceit, low interest rates, the Federal Reserve giving people money, and we had that daycare thing. And it's a messed up situation. Then the inflation and so forth and so on. Mitch, do you want to add anything to that question and answer?
Yes, everything you said is accurate, except we have to add one big component part, which takes everything into account. In the last 5 years, 21.25 trillion of fraud has been created, from which in 2024, 450 billion of money was stolen from the single family homeowners. For 450 billion, there's your reason why the fraud has been created right there. They used all of these elements and they pulled all these wheels, they pulled all these mechanisms in order to create 21.25 trillion. The average value prior to 5 years ago was roughly $20 trillion of all single family homes in the United States. There is no justification whatsoever in math, in law, under USPAP, under any state's property tax code. There's no justification to literally go up 100% in 5 years on real estate tax in value. So it's valuation, overvaluation equals the overtaxation. That's what they did it for, 450 billion.
And they are definitely taking that money, and where that money is going other than the fraud, I do not know, because it's not helping us. I'll tell you that. And we're going to get into market update, but it's just this last thing from our friend, Johnny Fly. Love you, Johnny. This guy, he's kooky. I love him. He says, don't worry, USAID will save the housing market. How much faith do you have in that statement? Mitch, how much faith do you have in Johnny's statement right there?
The reality is USAID should be shut down. We touched on that. But it's, I get it.
Yeah. All right. That's fair enough. I don't think that statement's accurate myself, but let's move on to the mortgage and housing market update. John. Johnny just makes me, he makes me feel better. I love it. What are friends for? All right, guys, let's go into this next part here. I'm going to go over some key data points that I want you guys to look at that is before the global financial crisis and then during the global financial crisis. So I'm going to show you that we really haven't seen things implode, not just because of the fraud, corruption, and data manipulation. It's also because we haven't gone into a technical, meaning the public understands, the public freaks out. We haven't gone into a technical recession. And when we go into a technical recession, according to the data, and they may change the data, that's when stuff really gets bad, because a lot of people are like, well, the recession's not going to hit. It would have hit by now. No, it wouldn't have. So let's go back again, starting with unemployment, which, by the way, that just came out and that dropped to 4%. We'll go over that a little bit later today. And that's actually sent the 10-year up. Very interesting. But during the global financial crisis, you guys can see right here, November of 2007, the unemployment rate was 4.7. Okay. December 2007, it was 5. So November 4.7. December 5. But what I want you guys to understand is unemployment kind of just started trickling up right before the global financial crisis. But it wasn't until recession, which you guys can see in gray right there, that unemployment skyrocketed to 10%. So it doesn't get crazy until the recession happens. Now, likewise, unemployment right now has also been going up, sitting at 4%. January just came out. This says 4.1. It's actually 4%. And I want to point out again, we're not far off from the unemployment that we had right before the global financial crisis. And remember, they went back and edited this. So during the time, the unemployment rate was probably lower, but they went back and they changed a year's worth of data. I mean, we forget this so quickly, but they revised the data. So expect the unemployment rate to skyrocket once we're in recession, not before. And that's the point I wanted to make. So we see a lot of stuff going on with the labor market, a lot of unemployment, but imagine what that's going to look like when and if we enter recession. So remember that we're not in a technical recession. When we are, that thing goes up, it skyrockets like crazy. Now, let me show you guys median sales price for houses. Okay. And this is a point that is very, very important to me. Now, what you guys are going to notice, first of all, this is quarterly. This is median sales price of houses, sold units. This is for new houses, if I'm not mistaken. This is quarterly. This is not monthly. But what I wanted to explain is right before, so we got to go to Q4 of 2007 because we're already in recession here. But right before recession, home prices really didn't go down too much. So Q1 of 2007, the median sales price was $257,400. Now to Q4, okay, so right before recession, Q4 of 2007, home prices dropped $19,000 roughly right before recession. That represents 7.3%. However, it wasn't until the recession started, which again, what's accompanied by that? Unemployment. Unemployment is massive for the housing market and the foreclosures. So again, during recession, Q1 2008, median sales price $233,900. And then we go to right here, Q1 of 2009. So we had all of that decline in median sales price. We lost about $30,000 during recession, which equaled 12.5%. So home prices went down roughly, looking at the quarterly big picture, again, during recession, 12.5%. So it went down a little bit before recession, probably bringing the economy into recession. So you had a little bit of that decline in sales price. And that probably helped us go into recession on top of subprime mortgage collapse and things like that. But again, the price decline, I want you guys to understand, didn't really happen until recession. It happened a little bit going into recession, but not until we're in recession. Now, let's see where we're at right now, because people are like, well, home prices aren't going down right now. Yeah, they are. Home prices are going down right now, but they're not going down in every single area. Here's the median sales price for existing. This is not new now. All right. And this was updated to December of 2024. So this is saying we peaked, and unfortunately, this is maxed out. We don't have a lot of data from Fred for median sales price. I wonder if they do that on purpose. But this maxed out, median sales price maxed out at $432,900. Home prices have gone down from that period of time. Let's see here, $23,600, which represents 5.4%. The reason I'm showing you guys this is because home prices have been going down. That is a similar pattern to right before we entered the GFC, because again, when home prices go down, especially right now, it entangles so many other things because our mortgages are levered up as collateral for other debts like pensions and annuities and things like that. But my point is, home prices, according to this, just looking at the last 6 months to, you see here, June, prices are down 5.4%. All right. So that's not good for the housing market. Now, another thing, what does everyone say we need right now? We need inventory. So I wanted to point out, as far as new, and this is new homes, okay? So we're only talking about new homes. So December of 2007, new home inventory was 9.6 months. I should go to November technically, but that's okay. So 9.6 months, and it wasn't until recession that it really skyrocketed to over a year's worth of supply. Now, I would argue that the data that we have right now is not accurate. We know that because the survey says it's not accurate. I think it's way more than this, but right now we're sitting at 8.5 months of supply. So if we go into recession, expect this already high number. That's my point. This is already high to go up even higher. We are near where we were at during the GFC. Not there. It was still a little bit worse during the GFC as far as these numbers. But remember, they edited this information. Going into the recession, we probably had the same exact information. Do you hear me? Okay, so they edited a year's worth of data. We're probably the same exact data that we have right now. My point is, guys, something's coming and it's going to be bad. Don't forget that. Let's keep going, okay? But that's the months of supply. I want to show you guys the demand. Okay, so I went back to 2002. Okay, the GFC, the global financial crisis, was right about here, 2008 to 2009. I want to show you guys that demand right now in the housing market is worse than the GFC. The demand is way down here. Okay, so the composite index is at 210. That represents demand. During the GFC, it was all the way up to about, let me go right here, to about 665. So what, almost double the composite? So demand is in the toilet right now. So what I'm wondering is when rates do go down, and that's what I'm saying, when rates go down, we're probably going to get a lot more inventory. And remember, the net is 30%. So 70% of the people that sell their home buy a new one, which leaves 30% net inventory. So we do get inventory for people selling their homes. But I wanted you guys to obviously see here that demand is in the absolute gutter right now, and that's not good for the economy. Now let's go into the interest rates here. Then we'll go do some questions. Now, interest rates today are sitting at 7%. That's going to go up because the 10-year is going up. It'll probably end today somewhere at 7.02 or 7.03. We've been stuck at 7% for a long time. This 7%, remember, you guys, represents conventional mortgages. You see this right here is your FHA mortgage, substantially lower than conventional. Now, a lot of times, unless you have a 20%, even a 15%, and good credit for conventional, most of the time, mortgage insurance is also lower with FHA. So generally, you get a lower interest rate with FHA and lower mortgage insurance with FHA, unless with conventional up here, you have high credit and a higher down payment. Okay, so you got to take those things into consideration. Another thing I want you guys to remember is generally you're going to get a lower interest rate using a broker versus a direct lender. And you usually have about a 1-month grace period after the first credit run is done on your credit. The reason that's important is remember, each credit pull, which is called an inquiry, will harm your credit from 5 to 8 points. So you get a grace period. In other words, when you're ready to shop, make sure you shop in that specific period of time. So, okay, let's start looking for a mortgage. Let's look at 3 or 4 of them and see who offers the lowest interest rate and lowest closing costs and also best service. Now, remember, you guys, in addition to that, remember how bad a mortgage really is. I'm showing you guys a loan amount of $324,000 at a 7% interest rate, which is today's interest rate. So if I get a loan for $324,000, I end up paying back in just principal and interest $776,000, which means my real interest rate, if we look at the actual interest amount, is 140%. When I add taxes and I add insurance and I add HOA and bills like maintenance on top of that, the insurance can go, the interest can be up to 200%. And I tell you that because you can't use your emotions to buy a house. And I know it's a very emotional thing. You got to use math. Now, one thing when it comes to these amortization schedules, I'm always telling you guys, okay, make an extra payment of $19,000. So if I made an extra payment of $19,000, okay, let me show you how much this actually saves you. Okay, so again, we're going to make a payment of $19,000. You see that right here. You guys can play with this yourself. Look at the impact this is going to make on the amortization schedule, which again applies to a mortgage. So if I pay a one-time payment of $19,000, my loan now turns into a 25-year loan from a 30-year loan, and I save $109,000 in interest. And remember, you guys, that $19,000, whose money is that? That's my money. Unless my house value crashes, which it probably will, okay, that money is something I get back if I sell my house. This goes into my piggy bank. So when I'm paying my mortgage down, I'm actually just lowering the debt and increasing my equity. So I'm not giving the $19,000 to the bank necessarily, unless my home value goes down. I'm giving that $19,000 to myself, and I'm paying my asset down, and I'm increasing the value in my collateral, which is loan to value. So LTV is going down. So play with this. You guys can also do monthly payments as well. So if I did $19,000 plus extra $200 every month, let's see what that would do. That would turn a loan into a 20-year loan right there, 20 years and 3 months. And I would save $186,000 in interest. In other words, please, you guys, go to that amortization schedule, check it out a little bit. See if it's something that you like. See if it's something that's helpful to you. I'm going to look for some questions, and then we'll go into our second video, which is from an extremely bullish CEO at Compass, talking about how, oh my God, the housing market's so bad. What's going to happen? Blah, 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 blah. And let me look for some questions, but anything you want to add there, Mitch?
Price is what you pay, and value is what you receive. So the question is the difference between buying versus renting. Online, they have home affordability calculators, and they have rent affordability calculators. They're pretty decent. The idea is to give you something to think about as you're looking for what you want to buy or what you want to sell, so as to make sure you've got money left over and you're not stressing your own balance sheet. The point being, when you take that into account and then you say, okay, fine, 30% plus of the households are in harm's way today of bankruptcy and or losing the roof over their head. If that happens, the only thing that's stopping that bankruptcy from happening is $9,000, of which $7,000 is the real estate tax. Well, think this through for a minute. If you have 140 million homes, 30% of those households are in harm's way. That's 45 million homes. Think of what that inventory could do to crush the market. And we come full circle to the difference being price is what you pay, value is what you receive. And coincidentally, we've run the math that the market right now today is 42% overvalued. How? Because of the real estate tax overvaluation and the resulting overtaxation, ergo fraud. So somebody comes into this market today and they buy $1 million home. What is that $1 million home really worth? Where was the fraud? Well, clearly the fraud is in the land, and clearly the fraud is in the inflation in the bricks and sticks. Point being, you've got to be unquestionably careful. One of us is muted.
Sorry, it was me. I was just saying that I think a lot of us are forced on the sideline, like forced to be careful. So it's actually could be a good thing for some people. I got a few things here. Let's try to answer these questions quickly, then we'll go into the video. But this is from Dan in the dirt. Hi, y'all. We are getting an FHA 203K renovation loan to buy a home in about 2 weeks. Hopefully this will be like our 3-road attempt to try to buy a house. So what they're referring to is, unlike a 203B, a 203B is a normal FHA loan. With a 203K, it's like a normal FHA loan, plus you can get, like, as an example, only like $20,000, $30,000 back from the loan, but you still got to pay that back, right? But you can get actually cash out of the loan through a 203K, as long as that money is used to renovate the property and to fix up the property. It's a loan that takes a lot longer when compared to a 203B. So 203B, so it takes longer. It's more complicated. But it's actually, it can help a lot of people. I don't know. I mean, you still got to worry about the price, Dan. So worry about the price. But that's a loan that can actually, it can help people. A little more complicated, takes a little bit more time. But, you know, depending on the deal, which there's probably not a lot of good deals right now, that could be a good loan. I got one for you. This is from our buddy Les Hom. Mortgage payment amount is all that matters to most. Mitch, can you just touch on why price is generally more important than payment?
Well, price is more important than payment because payment allows you to stay there on a monthly basis. But if the value of what you just bought disintegrates in the marketplace and you have to move in 3 to 5 years, so if it's $1 million home, for the sake of conversation, market drops 20%, you're on the hook for 200 grand. But not only that, you've also lost the implied value by virtue of the fraud that will come out of the market. So you have a downdraft just by virtue of what the market normally does. Then you add the downdraft caused by the fraud in the system. So you could be on the hook. If it's $1 million home, you could be on the hook for $400,000. That's why the value matters.
Yeah, you can't refinance. You can't refinance or sell either. That's huge. I mean, you're literally trapped. So if there's, and that's an if you have to. Now let's go here. I got one more question for you, and then I have one I'll take real quick, and then we'll get started quickly. This is for you. Got to buy because they're devaluing the dollar so fast. So I've heard a lot of people make that comment, like, oh my, hurry up. And I understand the point that they're trying to make, but when we look at going to the price, you can look at the national payment to income ratio. You can look at the price to income ratio. It is a massive bubble. So I understand the devalue of dollar, but to me, what's also important is the median household income, right? Can I afford to stay here, or will I be bankrupt if I own a home in 1 year? Will I be bankrupt if I lose my job? Can I survive 3 months if I lose my job? So do you want to respond to this one, Mitch?
If somebody has cash, and let me use a real life example. A friend of mine 2 years ago came to me and said, okay, I'm going to go forward on this multifamily construction. And I begged him, seriously begged him, don't do this, sell the land, get out of here. And he said, well, I've got cash in the bank, I'm bored, I've got to go do something, and this is what I want to do. And I said, you are going to construction on a 5 cap in a market with, at that time, increasing interest rates. And I said, this is a bad situation. You're going to be upside down. The day you put a shovel in the ground, you're upside down. Well, he moved forward, ignored me. But he called about 60 days ago and said, okay, blah, 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 you blank, 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 you were right. I said, okay, fine. Now, what are you going to do? Well, his response was that he's going to sit on it for 8 to 10 years and work the income stream up. He had some problems during construction. The point being that, again, price is what he paid, and he made a maneuver based on cash in the bank. And now he's going to have to sit there for the next 10 years and milk this thing in order to just to attempt to get out of it. Now, I believe he will get out of it. But here's the point. There was no yield on the money. So if somebody says, okay, I've got cash in the bank, I tell you what, if you're that concerned about it, go buy silver, right? What's your risk? You've got the asset, you own the asset. If inflation kicks in that you're so worried about, your silver's fine. In other words, why take the risk? See, silver would have stability. If you buy a house and you overpay for it, and you overpay for it by 42% in today's market, what did you just accomplish? If you go and buy a 20-year-old home and you say, okay, fine, I bought that home for 120 bucks a foot. Okay, I'm there with you. But if you're in at $210, $250 a foot, and it's a 5 or 10-year-old home, what did you do? You've got more risk to the downside than you do to the upside.
Well said, sir. Got two more real quick. I'm going to answer these quickly. One is from Christy. Never get a 30-year loan, only get a 15 or 10-year loan. I know Dave Ramsey says that all the time. Now, here's the thing, Christy. I think that generally that's a great idea. But my first house in Texas, when I had bad credit, I had to get an FHA. I got a 30-year loan, minimum down payment. I made a ton of money off of that because I could comfortably afford it. I got a great deal because the price was low. But nevertheless, a 15-year loan or a mortgage is way better than a 30-year because you pay way less interest. The only thing I wanted to add, Christy, is you can remember, like I just showed you, you can turn a 30-year loan into a 20-year loan or even a 15-year loan. So say, for example, I have a 30-year fixed at 2.5%. Okay. I don't want to refinance that into a 15-year loan because I have 2.5%. So all I have to do is just add $500, $600, $700 more per month towards that principal. And then I've turned my 30-year loan into a 15-year loan. But the difference is I am not locked into the higher payment. So if I get a 15-year loan, I'm always going to pay that. I'm locked into the higher payment. But if I get a 30-year and turn it into a 15-year, I now have the flexibility to pick between a 30-year and a 15-year payment, all because of the way that I'm paying my mortgage. So I just wanted to say that. This last thing from Les Home question: what's the difference between owning a home and getting married? It depends on how you buy the home. When I had a foreclosure, I was married to my home payment. I was married to my mortgage in Southern California. So just wanted to add that real quick. Now we're going to go into our second video. Let me do our timestamp. Our second video is going to be from the Compass CEO. Again, I want you guys to listen to this very bullish man talk about the housing market, and then we'll talk about it. But again, you're going to be listening to someone that is very, very bullish, acts scared on what's going on with the housing market. So let's take a listen right now. I'm going to mute Mitch and I. And if you guys can, in the comment section, let me know that the audio is okay. And for the love of all that's holy, ask some questions. I hope you guys enjoy.
The housing market is at its most unaffordable levels in recent history, and inventory is the biggest issue at play. Talking about it right now, joining us talk about housing, mortgage rates, what is actually happening here. Compass co-founder and CEO Robert Refkin, good morning to you. We were just talking off air just about how tough last year was in terms of just overall volume of sales. What is happening?
Last year, we saw the lowest level of transactions in 29 years, a period where the population grew 25%. We are seeing is there's just not enough inventory. This year,
the population grew by 25%?
Yeah, over the last 29 years.
Oh, the last 29 years. Okay. I thought it was, wow, that must have been a big year in 2022.
Yeah, so there's just, it's a structural challenge. There's not enough inventory. We are seeing more inventory grow, and the positive news is for buyers.
Right.
With 25% more inventory now than a year ago, and there's a path that this time next year will be at pre-pandemic 2019 levels of inventory. We expect prices to stabilize and grow at 2%.
So how much of the challenge, though, is the new buyer market, meaning people just priced out on one end, and then there's the sort of what I would describe as the mortgage rate mobility problem, which is somebody's bought a home, locked in at a good rate back 4 or 5 years ago, and now really can't move because the rate they're going to get today is much worse.
Yeah, we call that financial prison for some of these agents. They're locked into a mortgage rate and they just can't get out of it.
Right.
And so it's a lot better than it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, this.
But how much? I guess if you were to look at the new buyer market versus this sort of locked-in prisoner dilemma, how does that pie chart look?
It is more for the locked in.
Okay. So the locked in is the bigger problem.
Yes, 75% of homeowners 3 years ago were locked into 4% mortgage rates or below. So if a year and a half ago when mortgages were 8.2%, right, now it's much better, 7%. The delta between 8 or 7 and 4 is just too much for people want to leave. It's a financial asset. They don't want to lose it.
Plus,
right,
we keep thinking that rates are going to come down. And even though the Fed has cut rates, we have not seen mortgage rates come down commensurately.
And that's the good news. Over the last 3 years, this sentence has been pervasive. I'm just going to wait until mortgage rates come down.
Yeah.
The good news about September 18th, when the Fed brought down rates and mortgage rents went up, we don't hear that statement anymore. And so on the negative side of the ledger, you have affordability, prices, mortgage rates. But on the positive side of the ledger, you have the end of the statement, right, I'm going to wait for mortgage rates to come down, and you have more inventory.
Okay, so take us around the country real quick. Miami, let's do Miami, Florida. Everybody was rushing to Miami, Florida during the pandemic. What's happened to prices there?
So Miami, Florida, yeah, is one of the 8 states where there's actually more inventory than the pre-pandemic period. So of the large states, Florida and Texas are in that group. So those are markets where you're seeing more price drops than any other market.
But
it's upwards
Florida
of 40%.
Florida has its own issues with the condo resetting, right? With the new rules that require everybody to go in and make good for all the fixes that they haven't done for years.
Exactly. More HOA fees, higher insurance. You can't.
But you're seeing the interesting part to me was it's happening in Florida and in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
Right. And Austin doesn't have a lot of those same issues. And so what's happening?
These were the markets, the biggest boom markets on the way up, and they're the ones that are feeling the most pain on the way down.
It's not just off by 40%.
More than 40% of Miami, more than 40% of Austin, more than 40% of Dallas have price drops today.
Price drop. Okay, so the price drop is not by 40%. It's
just the percentage of the total inventory.
What kind of price drops are we talking about? And if you were to project out for those who are looking for property in an Austin or in a Miami, do you say to yourself, wait another year because this is another 10%? I don't know what it is. You tell me.
I would say this year will be a great year to buy in those markets, but in other markets. Of the entire country, 33% of the market, of the entire country, 600,000 homes, have a price drop today. That's the second largest number of price drops in 10 years.
What about New York?
New York is actually, it is moving up.
Right.
So New York State, the inventory is basically flat year over year, and the overall prices are, as a result, up 16% year over year.
Would you go buy on an investment level or any other level in the Palisades right now if you could?
I would.
You would?
I would.
Because you just think it's going to...
Los Angeles is still one of the most beautiful places in the world. It will come back in an incredible way after all catastrophes. That tends to happen.
Right.
It will build more safely. It'll build more beautiful. And I've been pleasantly surprised by how many people want to stay there. Yes, there are the stories of people that are moving to Dallas, Austin, Miami, Orange County, San Diego, San Francisco, or New York, and many more stories.
They're playing us out. Most undervalued market in America today. If we had this.
That was hard to listen to. A few things that he said. He said that this is going to be a great year to buy. Literally every single freaking realtor says that this is going to be a great year to buy. He failed to talk about one of the most important things, which is the price. He just said price cuts. He didn't even talk about price from a national payment to income ratio or a PE ratio, and he did not define affordability. What does affordability mean? Does that mean having no consumer credit card debt? Does that mean having 6 months of savings after you move in? Yeah, it means some of those things, right? He didn't talk about debt to income ratio. All he's saying is he's stumbling around the stage. He's saying, it's going to be a great time to buy this year. You're going to have plenty of options, and he's leaving out the most important things, which means, in my opinion, he's an absolute fraud, and he's helping absolutely no one except to keep the fraud going. Mitch, I'm going to throw up some questions here. Anything you wanted to add on that video?
Yeah, coincidentally, if you remember, we have what's called the Wheel of Fraud, and it's a great graphic. But everything we're talking about here this morning, if you can imagine, there was a movie called Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory. And there was a drum, and attached to that drum were a whole bunch of levers, and you pull the levers and different things happen. Well, in essence, everything we're talking about here this morning is that drum and those levers. You have interest rates, you have location, right? Real estate is all location, 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 and that's true. So you've got to get down to those markets. The problem that I have with these Wall Street talking heads, the guy's got a $250,000 salary or a $500,000 salary, or he's a CEO of a bank and he's got a multi-million-dollar salary. They are so disconnected from reality, right? They don't have renters. They are speaking their book. So it just screams lack of credibility. Plus, even as speaking his book, if we had the chance to depose him and ask him questions back and forth, he'd fall apart, because you can't say on one hand, yeah, this is the greatest time to buy, yet inflation is through the roof, supply chains are through the roof, and inventories are, according to him, low, but they're coming up. Okay, none of that makes any sense. You can't do it on the same plane. So you've got bifurcated people that have a lot of money, disposable income. So for them, okay, yeah, we'll go pay cash. It doesn't bother us. But that's ignorance and arrogance. It's ignorance of what's happening with the rest of society. At 30%, that is likely to go bankrupt or lose the roof over their head. And it's arrogance to think that, well, it doesn't matter. And it's ignorance not even to know the facts. They have no credibility.
Well said. I think you were nicer than I was. I don't know. That was pretty mean still. All right. I have a question here from Gita. Travis, what is corporate rental property ownership? I think what she's talking about is like fractional ownership, I think is what she's saying. Where fractional ownership, and this is my opinion. Man, I piss off so many people with my opinion, but it is what it is. I don't think that should be allowed. I know we don't want regulation from the government, but I don't think institutional investment should be allowed for our single family residents. And I don't think fractional ownership, where a whole bunch of people own one property, like 200 people own one property. So it's like a crowdfunding thing. So we raise all these funds from 200 people. We go buy a house and that's in our portfolio now. I think that's what that is, fractional. I don't like it. I think it's horrible. If you want to do that for apartments or commercial multifamily, by all means do it. But when it comes to single family homes, single family, it just stay out of our housing market. I got some stuff for you in a second here, Mitch. People cannot afford a 15-year loan. People cannot afford a 30-year loan. You know what I'm talking about? Because of why? The prices. Remember that. This is a buddy, Trey. Trey, I miss you, buddy. Me and Trey, we're talking for like a year and a half. Trey took the home buying course. I don't know if he took the property tax yet, but he took the home buying course. He started a Discord community and he purchased a house over a course of a year. He stayed very, very patient. He had to switch agents, and he ended up moving into a house, I believe, with, I think Mitch Trey, let me know in the comment section. I think about $60,000 or $70,000 in equity. I believe you walked into the home with 25% in equity. So I believe Trey purchased his home 25%. So a lot under market value. And he accredits that a lot to what we've learned on the channel as far as wedge and cash flow in the community. But comment below, Trey. Let me know that's accurate. I have one for you right here, Mitch. Heads up, there's no property ownership in the USA. Paying tax to the government every year is called rent. Plus, if you own it, you do not need permission or permits to build now, do you? Do you want to, I don't know. Do you want to respond to that one?
Well, we are working virtually round the clock to eliminate the real estate taxes, not just in Texas, but across the United States. In fact, we've got a major lawsuit on the go right now that's in the Fort Worth Court of Appeals. We are fully prepared to take this to the U.S. Supreme Court. So we're working on that issue. With regard to your ability to build without a permit, yeah, that's not going to happen, because even if you're in an ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction, in today's world, you are required to build under what's called UBC, which is Uniform Building Code. So I'm not sure about the last part of the sentence, but the first one, we're working on it.
And there's Trey confirming right there. Let's see here. Let's do one more. Boom, boom, boom. So it hurts me. I understand the question, but it depends on the deal, right? Here's the thing, Rico. I've been trying to buy a house for 2 years. I've been trying to buy a house since 2021, to be quite frank with you, but I will not settle for the largest investment of my life. I'm not going to settle on that. And I'm willing to pay a little bit more, not a lot like it's now, but a little bit more for my dream house. So unless I'm absolutely falling head over heels for this house, I ain't paying a penny more than I should for the house. In fact, I'm not buying anything unless my goal is 20%. So I want wedge of 20 to 30%, and I want cash flow of $500 a month, and I want to love the house. So if I find cash flow of $500 a month, if I find wedge of 20 to 30%, and it's a home I love, and my mortgage payment is similar to my rent payment, then I'm going to buy a house today. I will literally buy that house today. So I'm still looking. So in other words, my friend, it just depends. Keep looking, understand the math, and use the math to find the deal. Let's go into our market update right now. Let me do a timestamp on that update. This is going to be interesting. So let's start with the 10-year. This is quite a ride this morning. So the 10-year was actually, over the last month, it was down, but now it's back up to 4.5%. I mean, it's staying here at 4.5%. You guys can say that this has skyrocketed. Why did this skyrocket? When the job numbers came in low, well, unemployment also printed low at 4%. So unemployment went down. You guys see that breaking news. We'll do a video later today to really go into the Bureau of Labor Statistics, but it dropped, unemployment dropped, and this freaking thing went skyrocketing up. You can see that the 10-year is important to watch because it's the longer end of the yield, which affects residential mortgage rates. That's important to you as a potential homeowner or potentially someone that wants to refinance, because what this is saying is you ain't getting any relief for mortgage rates anytime soon. So let's keep going here. Here's CME Fed Watch. Now, this is interesting. So this is the market's expectation of when is going to be a rate cut. Not that it would matter to you because that's the federal funds rate they're cutting, not the 10-year. The 10-year affects mortgage rates, not the federal funds rate. But they're saying in March, next time the Federal Reserve meets to talk about rates, to decide whether or not to lower them, they're not going to lower rates. 85% chance, unlikely. In May, they're saying 70% chance, the market is anyways, which is completely useless, 70% chance of no rate cut in May. It's not until June that it gets under 50%. So maybe in June, we'll have a second rate cut. But I'm going to tell you guys right now, with any uncertainty in the economy at all, any signs of recession at all, any bank going out of business, anything happens like that, these rates are going to go down. All right. It's going to be completely off of the schedule here. So look out for the turmoil. Let's keep going here. Here's a 5-year break-even inflation rate. This is showing us that the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell is absolutely useless and needs to be locked up and shut down, quite frankly, because what he's done over the last 2 years is nothing. He's literally not helped us at all. Inflation expectations are important. They want this stuff grounded, and this is at 2.57, which exceeds their 2% goal. They've been doing quantitative tightening for what, almost 3 years, is it now? Almost 3 years, right? So almost 3 years. When we start 2022, March of 2022, and so it's almost, yeah, so almost 3 years, and the freaking break-even inflation rate is just as high as ever, which means the market knows that you're a joke, Federal Reserve, and knows that you're going to probably just bail people out, and we need to shut your butt down. You're a waste. You're killing me. I mean, we don't deserve to be going through this struggle, is my point, Mitch. I should be successful right now. I'm working my brains out, and I'm barely hanging on. Screw you, Federal Reserve, and screw you for lying to us and to my friends and to my viewers. The expectations of inflation, this is showing you can't control SHI to the T. Okay? So that's what that's showing right there. Really do not like the Federal Reserve. Here's the reverse repo market. You guys, still money in the system, a lot less. This is dwindling, but it's not out yet, and this can change. But right now, there's $79 billion in the reverse repo market. Again, this sucker is going down. This is the extra money. they got a lot of extra money, Mitch. They got a lot of inflation in the market. Okay, take a look at it. But again, though, that's going to lift us out of recession, or it's going to be kind of a suspension system in recession. Here's the thing, you guys, the federal deficit, when is this going to update? Let me refresh this. It should update. I guess it's going to update next week. This is what we're sitting at for the first 3 months of the fiscal year. Remember, the fiscal year starts in October, $710 billion. So Doge, good job. I'm liking it. Save money. But you are just not effective enough because the freaking deficit is absolutely outrageous, sitting at $710 billion, which again is a sign that our economy is not okay, that we are preventing a recession with a smokescreen called deficit and called inflation. Let's keep going. Here's the other issue, guys, which Mitch and I have been talking about constantly, and probably why we like each other so much, because we keep talking about real, which is, remember, real means like in this real, it's like real, right? It means adjusted for inflation. Real median household income has not gone up since we have less income now than 2019. 2019 real median household income was $81,210. Okay, so years later, we have less income now. So we're making less money adjusted for inflation, sitting at 80,610. How is that a strong consumer? How's that a strong consumer? Let's keep going. All right. Personal savings right on top of that is in the gutter, and they revised this drastically upward. This was in the twos. All right. They revised this information, which means they just changed it. And they also changed the median sales price for new homes. So they're freaking crooks, man. But nevertheless, you can see that it is in the gutter. So not only are people like making less money than before, they also have less savings than before and more debt than ever before. So less money, less savings, more debt, not a good thing. Look out for the delinquencies and defaults, but the credit card debt is sitting at what is that right there? 1.09 trillion. So 1.09 trillion in credit card debt is some of the absolute worst possible debt to get in. All of that to say, the inflation is confusing to a lot of people. The inflation is arguably keeping us out of a technical recession. But another thing that's keeping us out of a technical recession, Mitch, is the fact that they just revised the data. They change the definitions of recession. They keep changing things. And it all has to do with public perception. And why do I say public perception? Well, because mom and pop are responsible for 70% of GDP. So if mom and pop are like, oh my God, there's a recession, what's going to happen? They're going to stop spending money. And they're going to start saving money. Why do I say that? Because it happens every recession. Go back to every recession. When we enter recession, people stop spending and they start savings. The economy doesn't want you to do that because it's barely being strung along. Mitch, anything you want to add to that market update, sir?
The real median household income is extraordinarily interesting because it does tie to what we've been saying. So that's $86,000. Well, the cost to raise a family of four, give or take, is somewhere between 105 and 110,000. So you can automatically see the delta. And then when you see the delta, you simply say, okay, that is why 30% plus of the household population is going to lose the roof over their head. They are completely upside down. They're being forced by virtue of playing with the mechanism, right? They're playing with the levers. The government plays with the levers. They cause the interest rates to go up. Houses become less affordable. So it's not that complicated if you look at it from the standpoint of using the levers, who's doing the manipulating and who's pulling the levers and what economic impact, which they're too dumb to figure out, but there really is an economic destruction taking place here. So I even sent something to Travis Late last night called an economic destruction indicator. It's an idea, but that's one way you figure out which side of the government you want fired. It's not the question of how much money you're paying somebody. The question is, what's their economic destruction output? So these things are all tied at the hip, but that graph on the real median household income says a lot.
Yeah, it says a lot that the talking heads aren't talking about it as well. You could say even more than that, because remember that guy from Compass wasn't talking about price and he wasn't defining unaffordability. He just says, I think this is going to be a great time to purchase this year. And if it was me, I would buy. But tell me one realtor that doesn't say that on TV or on YouTube. Tell me one realtor that doesn't say that exact same thing, which means that they're freaking useless. Just use AI. That's one. But there are, I don't want to upset people. I've met a handful of solid realtors. All right. I've met a small percentage of people that I would consider that are actually skilled and are good. Now we're running a little bit late here. I want to get through some of these questions. Good. We went through this one already. Any chance of a foreclosure moratorium? The thing is we don't need a foreclosure moratorium because we have loan modifications now. And those loan modifications, you guys are just wrapping up foreclosures and putting people in a circle. So the new moratorium is loan modification, to be honest with you. And so probably what will happen is just potentially keep extending certain types of modification moratoriums or modification guidelines. We'll keep in touch with Melody Wright on that one. I want to talk about this, but we're losing time. Obviously, USAID has been robbing us. Go to the whitehouse.org if you guys want to see some of the things that they've been spending their money on. It's absolutely freaking crazy. Mortgage rate or house sale price deters buyers more. I have been waiting on the sideline for the last 3 years, thinking that rates will come down. Will we see rates under 5%? You want to answer that real quick, Mitch?
Time will tell because the levers are not being adjusted properly. If the Federal Reserve was not there and the market was allowed to act in a normal market condition, absolutely. But the problem is it's being blocked by the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve is there to protect the banks, wrongly as far as I'm concerned, and wrongly because I can prove it. But nonetheless, that's what their job is. And so it's a very difficult question to answer. You can see in the commercial mortgage rates that they're up. They're not coming down. So they're 7.25. On the single family side, time will tell. It's a function of how many people get into trouble. If big builders get into trouble, yeah, interest rates will come down because they'll be forced to do it.
Well, and not only that, let me see if I can find this real quick here. They already are offering interest rates under 5%. Let me see if I could find one. Here's one right here. I'll show you. So in my market, and this is why I'm always telling you guys, like, look at your market, look at your subdivision, because this is already happening in some markets. Here's something from Lennar right here. This is an FHA fixed rate at 3.99%. I've seen this at 0.99%. New home builders have been offering interest rates under 5% for the last 3 years. And the home prices are still sideways and down here in Houston. So even these low interest rates, at least here in Houston, it's not working, probably because the freaking property taxes are like $10,000, $12,000 a year on a $300,000 house. Property taxes are killing us out here. So that is that. Let me go back here.
And also be careful of the mortgage rate buy downs that are being promulgated by the builders. That stuff is poison. Be real careful, because that literally makes our case that you're overpaying for the home.
Well, right. And so a buy down is a temporary relief on a payment. It's basically just masking it, and you're stuck with a higher payment after it adjusts anyways. So in other words, if you can't afford a market rate on a house comfortably at even a 15-year, then you probably shouldn't be purchasing it. This is from Les Hom. Continuing inflation makes sitting on the sidelines very expensive. I understand that, but also purchasing a home at above market value makes it even more expensive. And I looked at that, Les. If I purchased a house right now, I would have no savings, and I would probably be behind on my bills because my house payment would be $1,500 higher right now, and I would have had to spend $30,000. So I've lost $30,000, and my overhead is $1,500 higher. How is it not more expensive to purchase a house right now? In every faucet of purchasing a house right now, it's more expensive, unless you're like Trey or you're like me, you're hunting and you understand. That's the important thing. You understand the math. You understand how to get a great deal with the wedge, with the cash flow, something that you love. You don't have to leave. You have ample savings in the bank and things like that. So I got one more question here, and I got to get to this last video. We're almost at an hour. Dean, thank you for the support, brother. I appreciate it. It means a lot to me, Dean. Will home prices drop this year in Texas? I'll answer that first one. How would eliminating property taxes in the state affect home values? Now, first of all, home prices have already dropped in Texas. They have been dropping in Texas, and then they've also been going up in Texas. But most areas, especially if new homes, they're already dropping, Dean. You have to get into the multiple listing service or work with the realtor to pull comps for you. Doing that subdivision analysis is going to answer that question for you, because, again, I can go on my MLS right now, and I did our last live, and I will do it when we have our Zoom and our trainings, and I'll show you guys that prices have been going down. Okay, it's just, are they going down where you want to buy? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends what you're looking for. So you want to answer this next thing, Mitch. How would eliminating property taxes in the state of Texas affect home values?
It's eliminating property taxes in favor of the uniform state's sales tax. So what happens in reality, yes, the real estate taxes on a house go to zero. But think of it this way. You've got 12 million houses. Even if you said it's $7,000 a house on average in the real estate tax, well, that's $98 billion that is now in the state of Texas, floating in the economy, from which other things can be done. So will it lower the price of a house? The way I look at it, the easy solution is it's neutral. It doesn't lower the price. It doesn't raise the price. Somebody's not going to come here and say, oh, okay, I'm just going to, because of the real estate tax is because it's replaced with a uniform state's sales tax. But what it does do over the long haul, from the standpoint of people moving in, which is what drives the economy, your schools can no longer commit fraud. So your real estate taxes are going to certain entities. They're called taxing entities, one of which is the school districts. Your school districts are committing fraud on multiple levels, and we've been explaining that through all these videos. So the elimination of that real estate tax does an awful lot of good. There is no downside. There's only pure upside. But as far as the price of the house is concerned, the easy way to understand it is probably delta neutral. It probably isn't going to change. Market situations will change the price of a house. Interest rates will change the price of a house. The elimination of the real estate tax keeps money. So even if you said it's average $7,000 a year in mom and pop's hands, well, that $7,000 a year is to their benefit, for which they can go and get something else. They can go and buy something else, or have a savings, right? So not go bankrupt, because remember, 30% of the household population, 30% plus, is in harm's way of bankruptcy. And the only thing that's stopping them from going bankrupt is $9,000. And of that $9,000, roughly $7,000 is the real estate tax. If you don't want 30% plus of your population to go bankrupt, get rid of the real estate tax. That's the benefit. It's kind of delta neutral on the value of a home.
All right, good, good. Well done, sir. Let me throw this one up here real quick. There's a little bit of confusion. I want to clean this up. Devin's asking, aren't buy downs the full length of the loan, though? It depends on the buy down. The buy downs that we were referring to are called temporary buy downs that new home builders are offering to you, where they're actually able to buy the rate down by crazy amounts, like 3 to 4%. As a loan officer, I can't do that because of certain laws and certain closing cost parameters that you cannot exceed. So the builders can do that because they're the owner and they just work it into the numbers. So those are temporary buy downs, to where the interest rate can start at 3%, and then the second year it's 4%, and then the third year goes to 5% and it stays fixed. A traditional rate buy down is where I'm just getting a normal loan and say I qualify for 6%, but it makes sense for me because of the pricing, which is the real cost of the interest rate. It makes sense for me to buy my rate down to 5%, and that is generally fixed for the entire length of the term. That is not what's going on with new builds. So as a loan officer, I can't buy someone's rate down 3 to 4%. It's literally against the law, depending on the loan amount. But if the loan amount is a normal loan amount, I can't even touch it. I can't do it. Only the new home builders can, because again, the value is there. So two different types of buyouts, and two different types of buy downs. Let's get started on this last video, and thank you guys so much for your patience. We'll end it after this video, and this is going to be on property taxes. This video came out yesterday. This is from Greg Abbott. I don't know if he got our message, Mitch. Maybe he got our message, maybe he didn't, but this video came out yesterday. The future of Texas property taxes. I'm not sure if you heard this video, Mitch, but if you guys can, let us know that the audio is okay.
A lot of Texans are facing an affordability crisis. Last session, we slashed your property taxes. But for many Texans, those cuts were wiped out by local taxing authorities that hiked your property taxes even more. That must end this session.
As you heard there, one of the first things Governor Greg Abbott would like Texas lawmakers to focus on this session is cutting property taxes again. He named relief for property owners as an emergency item during his State of the State address, and he specifically called for cuts totaling $10 billion. We're digging into how that could happen and what the implications would be if it comes to pass. So joining us this afternoon is Jennifer Rabb. She is the president of the Texas Taxpayers and Research Association, which is a public policy nonprofit here in the state. Jennifer, thanks for taking the time today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
I want to begin with that call to bring about $10 billion of property tax relief. The governor said the key to making that happen is closing what he called local loopholes. Talk about what that means exactly in reality.
Well, what he's talking about is how tax rates are calculated. Tax rates, or property taxes in general, are intended to be allowed to grow with population inflation. But the actual tax rate calculations allow more growth than that. So he's talking about tightening down those calculations so that they cannot have, super amounts of growth each year.
One other thing the governor mentioned during his speech is that he would like to see elections to raise local tax rates to require a supermajority of support from voters moving forward. That would certainly make it much more difficult to get these tax rates approved based on our own reporting. So what's your stance about that idea?
Yes, we agree with that. If a taxing unit wants to raise your property taxes, say 8%, as Harris County actually raised it more than that, and I think the governor was alluding to Harris County, I think a supermajority of voters' approval makes a lot of sense. also, with every time a taxing unit puts a bond in front of taxpayers to, build a new stadium or build a new whatever, that actually increases property tax rates. And I think a supermajority in that instance also makes sense so that taxpayers can be sure that they're only for the things that they really want.
Of course, we'll have to see if any bills are filed specifically to that and how far they go during this session. So we'll turn the page just a little bit now.
Sure.
If lawmakers ultimately approve the kind of property tax relief that the governor is wanting, it would mean perhaps less revenue going to local governments or school districts or other entities across the state. What's the impact that you might imagine that could have on services for taxpayers? Because ultimately it is their dollars.
Yes, well, I think that the way tax rates are calculated and even the way that we would like to see them calculated, even if the loopholes were closed, will allow taxing units to collect the amount of money, property tax revenue that they need to provide services. What the governor is talking about is ensuring that voters and property owners aren't getting more government than they actually want through property taxes.
And as we're looking ahead to this session, are there any other types of priorities that you would like to see potentially from the legislature about tax policy?
Sure. Well, in property tax in particular, my organization is concerned about the heavy tax burden on businesses. We would like to see the legislature consider an exemption for business personal property. Only businesses pay property tax on personal property, and that means things like equipment, desks and chairs and computers, that sort of thing. Individuals, of course, don't. So we'd like to see the legislature consider an exemption for that to kind of balance out the tax burden, which is right now heavily on business.
All right, we will leave our conversation there. But Jennifer Rabb, thanks so much.
That was excuse me, that was difficult to listen to because you hear these people like, yeah, we need to do something about property taxes, but nobody understands what they need to do and how it works. And the thing is it doesn't matter if property taxes are eliminated or not. What we're saying is they're violating the law. They're breaking the law, the Constitution. They're breaking the law and they're backing into value. She even said herself, it's like you create a value. Here's their budget. This is the budget we need to hit. So let's tax people's properties. You can't do that. The law doesn't give them that right to do that. They don't know what's going on. And what it's going to take is going to take the people caring. Enough people that care and step up and actually elect the right people or get elected themselves and make sure that these bills pass that we have in the House. It's an unfortunate thing. Mitch, you want to add to that? Was there any value you got from that video?
Yeah, somebody needs to reach out to her and hand her our amicus and bill video and hand her the Helen Kerwin video and say, read this and get up to speed, because pretty much everything she was saying is just it's not relevant. It's completely missing the point. If you allow these taxing authorities, the taxing entities, to continue with the fraud and the ability to create another tax, you literally have done nothing. You have stolen more money. You are part of the problem. These taxing entities have got to be stopped. But the bonds at the school districts must go down to zero. They have proven, we have the evidence, they are committing fraud. We just did a video on that less than 10 days ago. Those 3 videos in that person's hand, then she can get up to speed and then she can talk with authority and say, no, you're committing fraud. Call it what it is so you can fix it. And I'm glad that they're there. Don't get me wrong. I'm glad that she's there. I'm glad that she's making waves. But until you admit the fraud is being committed on the taxpayers, you are wasting time.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get everyone out of here. We're at about an hour and 8 minutes. And again, remember, you guys, we have everything chaptered. Mitch and I are working on a school seminars. I have 2 more classes coming to you guys. We're not going to bail out on you. Keep liking our videos. Please share them. Please email us, talk to us, let us know what's going on. And other than that, guys, don't spend your money this weekend. Happy Friday. And thank you for joining us. If you guys are out there investing in real estate, investing in your life, investing in your family, you guys already know we wish you luck and we hope you win.